Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Excel College Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Chambers.
And Isaiah Schmidt, co-hosting, I suppose.
Yes.
What else should I say?
No, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah. Episode 16, and our intro is getting closer and closer every day.
Yeah, we're more fluid all the time.
More fluid all the time. And so today, to help us be even more fluid, we brought on a special guest, Cassie Solis.
Yes, you said
Not
it
Soleil.
right.
Yeah.
Not Soleil.
Yeah. Explain to us why it's Solis and not Soleil.
Because I'm Hispanic.
There we go. That's a good reason.
There you
You
go.
pronounce the I like an E, and the S is not silent.
Can't argue with that.
That's a good explanation. So Cassie is one of our most well thought out students, as you can tell.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Starting off some
An
praise.
honor.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow. Hello.
She's here in C6, and we just finished up the philosophy module.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Philosophy coming after first launch semester, critical thinking,
Yep.
theology, and philosophy.
Yeah. So we want to talk about philosophy today.
Yeah.
And some of the big questions of life. Mm-hmm. But before we do that, can you just give us a little intro about what you do here? Who are you? Where'd you come from? Why are you here?
Where did I come from?
Where do you find the best Tex-Mex food in Kansas? Where are you from?
In Kansas. I'm not from Kansas, y'all.
Yeah, she is. She's from Kansas.
I am from Texas. I was born in Kansas,
Ah.
moved to Texas when I was like 2.5. Don't let them lie to you. I am Texan.
So if you say from, it's where were you born?
No, that is not what people mean when you say where you're from.
All right,
I have a Texas necklace. I'm branded. It's fine.
She does have a Texas necklace.
Anyway, I'm from Kansas. Because I was born in Kansas.
No,
Yeah.
you're
Loud and
wrong.
proud from Kansas. I need to get a New York
Andrew, where are
City
you from?
necklace. I'm from Memphis.
Where were you born though? That's what I mean.
Memphis.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Oh, interesting.
Born and
Okay.
raised.
Yes, I've got a Memphis tattoo.
No.
Anyway, I didn't mean to cut
No.
you
No,
off.
I was like, wait, no.
Didn't mean to cut you off. From Kansas.
I'm okay.
Then you whatever something with
Sure.
Texas in there. You have a necklace at least.
Sir? Yes. Yeah, I'm from Texas. I am currently a C6 student. I actually found Excel through a previous program called Global U. That is in y'all are partners. So
Oh yeah, we had Stephen come on and talk about Global U.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
See, y'all are
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe someday have Josh Owen on and talk about
Yeah.
it.
Oh.
Honestly,
That's the
it'd be a
goal.
great episode.
Joans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jones.
Joans is what Walter calls him. Yeah. So I'm not only a student, but I also am part of the marketing team. So if you go to our Instagram,
Hey, shout out.
and you read those captions, I'm actually the one that helped write those
Hey,
captions.
nice.
What's good?
And you provide the direction for the account.
Yeah. I help out. I dabble in
Yeah.
a few things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I do around here.
Why did you come here?
Why did I come here? Okay, so it's kind of a long story, but also not really. So when I was in Global U, it's a business admissions program, and I got to a point towards the end where I was like, I'm craving learning, and by that I was craving actually the type of learning that I did in high school, and I went through a worldviews curriculum in high school.
Whoa.
That walked through the biblical narrative through things like philosophy and theology and
Interesting.
science and
Really?
government. And it was so cool, and I did not appreciate it as a high schooler like I should have.
Was that public high school? Or?
No, that was a homeschool co-op.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
You were homeschooled?
No. Yes, sort of.
Whoa.
I was homeschooled for high school, but grew up in public school. So, kind of a both and there. But I was actually considering just going back through that curriculum because I still had all the books and everything, and was just like, I need some input. Like, I miss thinking and like pondering really hard questions and wrestling with things. And Josh Owens is actually the one that talked to me about Excel first, because I was not really interested in doing another quote unquote program.
Yeah, that's right.
And he kept telling me, he's like, Cassie, it's not a program. It's not a program. It's a college. And I was like, okay, well, prove it. And so then he told me about the curriculum, and I was like, no way. He mentioned Socratic discussions and the biblical narrative through things such as philosophy and the sciences and government and everything. And I was like, well, that lines up pretty decently.
Yeah.
And it also had the added aspect of community, which me doing my own curriculum definitely would not have had.
Right.
So I would say those are the two biggest reasons I came, was the learning, like true, real learning aspect, as well as doing that in a community.
Nice.
So
We need to do a testimony video with her.
Yeah.
Again,
I was like, what got
We did one like a month after they got here, and no one knew actually
Yeah.
what they were getting into. So we got to redo those. Sorry, Christian. Okay, so it sounds like you had kind of some experience in philosophy / a taste for philosophy before you got here.
Yeah, a little taste, a little sampler. Read Plato's Republic.
The whole thing.
The whole thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
In high school.
In high school.
Whoa.
Nice.
Read, the Communist Manifesto and all the things. Went through Schaefer.
Mm.
And
Wow, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All the classics.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. With what we're reading now in the curriculum versus like what you've done before, what's similar, what's different?
Yeah. In high school, it was definitely I feel like a larger overview. And definitely more geared towards, they were definitely like pushing you towards a biblical standpoint, which here at Excel, like that is the foundation, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like explicitly stated, like this is what we believe. You can tell by the way that they teach the curriculum, like this is where we're coming from. But like here, they give you the space to be like, okay, this is like, these are your options, like these are all the classical routes. And, we're really just wanting you to decide for yourself, like wrestle with the hard questions, like actually ask yourself the hard questions and come to your own conclusion, and like, yes, this is where we're coming from a biblical standpoint. And ultimately that's where we hope you land, but we're giving you we're presenting you with all the options.
Right. Yeah. Freedom.
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah. Even if it takes time, and I feel like there's a faith aspect there of like, y'all know, like we know what's true, we know what's real. And we believe that if you actually are pursuing truth and wisdom, like you'll come to that conclusion, Yeah. There's a lot of faith in that. So
yeah, that's awesome. Or even just that word wisdom and how it's like working this into discussions on a daily basis, but how wisdom is taking an author that maybe their final conclusion or contention you might disagree with, or maybe you'll see, maybe it goes in the wrong direction, but it's like, wow, this was true. What they said right here is so insightful and so well thought out. And really, it's a humbling experience because we talk about like that mapping process of like evaluation, you come to evaluation at the end. And so often we'll find ourselves evaluating a work or a reading, sometimes 5-10 minutes into the reading, or sometimes even before we begin the reading. It's like, I've already evaluated, because I know he's not a Christian and I know he has a non-Christian conclusion. I've already evaluated this is a wrong reading. This guy's going to be full of nonsense, and I'm going to pick apart his argument and find all the things he said wrong. Versus like suspend evaluation. It's actually more helpful to not know where he stands in regards to faith and read. And then you're like, wow, this is so insightful. This is amazing. Yeah. And you're suspending that evaluation until the end, until you really understand. And then you can find out. I feel like that's kind of what you're expressing there. But
I do love that aspect. It's like, okay, we'll give room for the author. And even give them time. Like, give yourself time to understand them and give them time to explain themselves in their readings, and even like through your own understanding as your understanding grows through things like discussion and even seeking the Lord on it, and doing what, I think this is an Excel term, but Charity uses it the most often, but like finding the gold in everything. Even if it's just like the only gold that you can find is just like they structured their argument really well, or like they explained themselves really well, and that in and of itself was like a really good contending point for them, but for sure.
Well, let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit about philosophy. So, like, as you guys know, if you've been listening, so our modules work. We have a module that has an overall question, and then it's got a question of the week, and each question of the week leads into the overall question of the module. So, overall question of philosophy was,
how do we
I was like, I
just
took the test this morning. Had a final
mark
exam
test.
and everything. Nope, I got it. How do we wisely answer life's 4 biggest questions?
That's a big question. You can answer that.
Well, no. I mean, yes, but I said I can list out the 4 questions.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what are the questions that we went through?
What is knowledge is the first one, and then what is real is the second one. What is good is the third one, and then the fourth one is what is ahead.
What is knowledge? What is real? What is good? And what is ahead?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
The 4 big questions of life.
4 big questions.
Boom.
So what about what is the meaning of life? Is that, how does that not count as one of the 4?
That's, I'd say meaning is often tied up with the ends.
Design,
so,
yeah.
So in terms of what's ahead, teleology.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
Like,
okay.
telos is like a study of ends, and like purpose. Your end is so tied into purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, at least that's where my discussion group on Friday, when we had that discussion about telos and the end of a thing, it's like purpose was like all over that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, purpose and meaning.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, where's this thing going?
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what it means.
Or even just the end of a sandal is to be put on a foot and like protect your shoe or protect your foot. The end of a chair is to like sit in it. The end of a human, like what's the end? What's our purpose?
That's the teleos.
Telos.
Teleology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could not.
Oh, that's right.
I could not. For the love of God.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so week 1, you did what is knowledge.
Epistemology.
So who did we read in week 1?
We read, who was it? Was that, Plato.
Yeah.
No. Did we
Recollections.
Yeah, Recollection. Yeah. We read Hume, which was skepticism. We read Descartes, which was rationalism. And then we read Locke, who was empiricism. Yeah.
So give us like a breakdown. I guess honestly, both of you. I mean, you've been through this 3 times.
Well, you went through it as well.
Yeah.
I
was. Yeah. Yeah. I had a really good feel for Recollection. I didn't like it. I didn't like Recollection.
Really?
No.
Very
I thought it was pretty weak, actually.
As far as memory being the guiding force.
I thought it was super weak.
Yeah.
Huh.
Interesting.
And then who else did we read? Descartes. Like Descartes.
Reason.
Yeah. I went down to Hillman with Rob and read that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Okay, so some of the main takeaways from the week, though.
From the week?
Yeah.
I think that was the week my group ended with Davis, and the whole time that we were studying knowledge and studying epistemology and reading everyone, I kept in mind the scripture from Proverbs, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah.
Because to me, the whole point of philosophy, like philosophia, the love and pursuit of wisdom.
Yeah.
Like, okay, always keep that in the back of my head, because I personally can get so lost in the like detail of whatever week we're in that I forget like the point. And so by the end of the week, I was really keeping that in mind and kind of wrestling with it, because I was like, where does this connect? Because it can't be separate, right? Because if like God is ultimate reality, then he's also like God of philosophy too. Like, he absolutely is. I wholeheartedly believe that. I just need to find where it connects. And Davis and our group got talking and basically got to the point that in all of the readings, reason can only, like, human reason can only take us so far. And there comes a point where you come to the end of human knowledge and reason and our ability to do so. And the rest of it is an act of the will, otherwise known as faith, to get the fullness of wisdom and the fullness of knowledge. So it's like reason can only take you so far, and faith takes you the rest of the way. It's not a separate thing. They have to go together, you know? And I asked Davis, I was like, is this the beginning of wisdom, which is where you reach like the end of your human reason, is like when you recognize that, and you recognize that reason can only take you so far, is like, that's the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. And then it circles, like, it just keeps going into itself. It's like
so you would say faith, I would probably say revelation has to take you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
We talked about that in the past, just about it's kind of frustrating actually, like especially as humans, because like we want to know, and like reason can literally only take you so far. And you actually have to depend on revelation.
Totally.
Well, and that's what you see in so many of the authors is like they reach the end of reason and they can't deal with it, so then they reason back to like the beginning and they're like, okay, there has to be something. And they just get so lost in it.
Whoa, Descartes. Let's talk a little bit about Descartes in this.
Can I say one thing on
reason?
reason?
Please.
That I just remember. I remember Davis. He's used this phrase a lot, but he's like, there's a difference between something having a magisterial role in your life versus something having what he calls like a ministerial role in your life. I mean, by magistrate, he means like something that rules over or controls or masters, magisterial, that kind of kingly image, a king or a ruler, versus a minister, which is something that like aids and gives aid or gives help to. And he's like, essentially what we mean in this reason and revelation tension is we'll often put reason as that magisterial thing, like the thing that's primary, the thing that like it is that lording over. But he said, in reality, reason is this ministerial role. And it's like, and when we get that flopped, is when we actually run into a lot of confusion.
That is so cool.
Yeah, when we put it in a place where it shouldn't be, essentially, when we put it in a place, reason is like the highest, which is like the whole Enlightenment era and like Kant and
because for Kant it was like. It was God.
Well, it was our God-bearing image. It was reason. Our ability to like to bear God's image was reason. Oh my gosh,
that's such a good way to do it.
But it's that frame of mind has like really helped me a lot throughout the years.
It's actually a pretty humbling thing, I feel like.
Yes, it was very humbling. It was really cool.
I feel not to get like too spiritual here, but so garden, tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Fear of the Lord is being in wisdom. And just that connection of like Eve's first thing wasn't like this like big. I had this revelation a couple months ago, but her like the first sin wasn't this like murder or this like super evil dark thing. It was wanting to know on your own accord. And then instead of trusting God for like the fear of the Lord is instead of like, because I believe like he wants us to have wisdom. But it's like the fear of him and walking with him is the beginning of it. Instead of, but
that's where it starts.
But in the garden, it was like I'm taking it for myself now.
Oh, that's good.
And I used to wrestle with, like trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, like in all your ways acknowledge him and he'll direct your paths. And I used to wrestle with that. It's like, okay, what do I not know though? And I think that was Eve's thing. I'm just like kind of like it's spitballing the story here, but like that. How did the serpent tempted her with like, well, what's God withholding from you? You know? Like, is that true though? Is it true? And like made her think like, is there something that I don't know or that he's like withholding from me?
That I need to know.
That I need to know. And I came to this like realization that like if he is the source of all things and of all truth, that like all truth literally lies within him and you can't find it anywhere else. You might be able to find like hints of or tones of or pieces of or like resonances of either that or lies. And so him actually saying like trust in me with all of your heart and like fear of me is the beginning of wisdom. It's not like this controlling thing. It's an actual like you can only find life in full truth if you're like because that's the only place to find it, and if you're looking for it elsewhere you're just going to get distracted or totally off course. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Which is kind of annoying because I want to be able to figure it out on my own.
Which doesn't exclude exploration, and like mystery and like even the realm of science and like understanding the created order, like reading matter. But it's like even that revelation's tied into that.
I'd say it's also, at least for me, when I hear something like that, it's relieving. So I'm like, I'm not actually missing anything because if wisdom, like if all wisdom and all truth is held in God, then I can know, like through my relationship with him and through getting to know him more, that he is going to, like trusting that he is going to give me that understanding and that wisdom as I seek it. And that he's not going to withhold anything that I actually need to know or understand if I'm in full pursuit,
in your current space.
In my current space. and that there's nothing outside of him that I need to go and like discover on my own that I might never, you know?
Yeah.
Like everything's within him.
Yeah. Oh, and Holy Spirit. So like Jesus talks about, I'm going to send you the Spirit, who's the Comforter, and he's going to teach you all things and lead you into all truth. Does that connect back to the garden?
Oh, wait.
I know. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's good.
I don't know. Does it? I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
Because a lot of John, the book of John, is like kind of this like good and evil, God and Satan, like light and darkness, truth and lies. So Jesus was like, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
And he said, like, I've come that you have life and life more abundantly. The thief came to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
So I was like, what does that look like? He took you off the path of life.
Yeah.
So the Holy Spirit comes back and leads you into all truth.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's cool.
Dang.
I just had that all day.
That's
I was
good,
like, wait,
yeah.
what?
Yeah. Huh.
That is so interesting.
So that's in what is knowledge.
Yeah. Epistemology.
Epistemology. And so I think we're saying reason and revelation, you have to have both.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the next week was?
What is real?
Okay. We weren't here for that week. No, I wasn't here.
Yeah. What?
I was in State College.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So I don't know anything about
Wait,
this
you
week, so
were?
you have to help me. Yeah.
Okay.
That's axiology.
Yeah, it felt like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so that's metaphysics, right?
Yeah,
What's real?
metaphysics. What is real?
There's a debate, another tension between
Mind
two
and
things.
matter.
Yeah, mind and matter.
Yeah, okay, I missed this. Okay. So
It was,
who did we read
it was
now?
an amazing one.
We read people like Lucretius, who was a materialist, and
He was Greek?
Yeah.
Yes.
First century BC.
Okay, so there's this like, he was a materialist in first century BC? Because there's this like conception that like materialism isn't a thing until like the 1700s.
Well, yeah.
Oh.
I've always heard David say, like, you know, in philosophy, it's a great question to ask, who or what is this philosopher responding to? Because these ideas are always born out of a frustration or like a, you know, you have this just conversation that's going from philosopher to philosopher. They introduce a problem, and then, you know, 100 years or 50 years down the road, this next philosopher and like answers that problem and then introduces another one. So it's like the absolute certainty. You know, Descartes kind of finally solved that problem by saying, I can think because I know. And then like later, then you have David Hume coming along, and he's like, we can't know anything because even our, you know, so it's just like this conversation. So I remember in my reading group, we asked that question. We were like, what do we think Lucretius, so it's metaphysics, what's ultimately or primarily real, what's real. And Lucretius would say only matter is real. Like he even in his article, he's even saying there's no mind, there's no soul. Even the soul, it's made of these
and
things.
he was saying this in the
Like,
first century.
First century BC.
Okay.
He's talking about atoms.
like tiny little,
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, he's like the soul is this like the atoms are much smoother and smaller.
Yeah, they flow, like, what is it, that they flow together better or something? Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, which to the modern mind, you're like, that's silly. I mean, that's silly. Yeah. But if you think about first century, it's like, this is actually profound. He's talking about atoms, a thing that's inseparable. Like if you continue to reduce a thing until you can't reduce it anymore, then there's this primary thing. Which
he wasn't calling them atoms, but now we know, like we would call them atoms. Yeah. But to him, it was just tiny pieces of matter.
So we're asking this question: what is he responding to? Like, why would Lucretius put forward this argument for only material in the first century BC? Which you're like, hey, materialism came around like in our idea way later. And my group was kind of like, well, probably like this hyper religious state of ancient Greece of like the god of the, like these gods of the gaps. How do we explain this? How do we explain this? How do we explain this? Like, oh, if you got to solve this problem, you got to go talk to this god or make a sacrifice here.
Wow.
And he's like the first like kind of just pushback against that. He's like, this is foolishness.
Interesting.
I know, and it's like how contrary that is to Greek culture.
Right.
How contrary that is later to pretty much all the cultures that are born out of Greek culture, even Christian culture.
Yeah.
All of the copies of Lucretius's Atomic Materialism were gathered up and burned. We were reading about it was like AD.
Dang.
I mean, it was much later than that, but the ripple effects of Lucretius were huge. So much so that the church tried to wipe him out. They tried to completely remove his argument from the face of the earth, but they didn't. It's still around. And now it's the probably leading, like, you know, we're always, maybe in the West, you're always like the atheists, you know, like Christians versus atheists, or it's like, it's more, and this is where our group was kind of like this realization where it's like, actually, they're just materialists. It's really not so much to believe or to conceive of God is foolishness, but it's more like only materialism. To believe in like the supernatural realm is foolishness.
Huh.
Oh, that's so
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Which I feel like a lot of Christians operate in that space, actually.
Anyway. Oh, gosh.
What?
Yeah. I know, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which would that be idealism?
Idealism. What is that term to you?
Mind over matter.
Oh, mind over matter.
So it would be the opposite of, literally like the opposite of materialism, where only the mind exists.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Barclay,
yeah. I want to say
and
Barclay.
he's Greek. No, okay.
No, he's
Charles. He's
he was. I think
Phoenix
he was
Suns,
from the UK.
Something.
Oh, I was thinking.
Yeah, I think he was Irish. Thanks, Christian.
We got our Hawaiian philosopher over here.
Yeah, apparently Irish. Yeah, but
Charles Barkley's Irish?
Charles? I don't think his first name was Charles. That Charles Barkley's the basketball dude. Oh my gosh. No, he's not Irish. You ever see that video where they're looking for the leprechaun?
Yes.
And in the hood, and he's like, my great grandpappy, he was Irish.
Oh my.
Anyway, moving on.
That's fantastic.
No, Charles Barkley's not Irish, but George Barkley was his name.
George Barkley's Irish. Yeah. Okay.
He was he was I just thought you were gonna say something.
Oh, no.
He was man, I can't remember the role that he held in the church, but essentially he was only mind, right?
Mm-hmm. Only mind?
Only mind.
And he's in the church?
Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about it.
That's interesting. Actually don't remember much from his reading.
Like Gnostic-ish?
Not Gnostic.
No.
Yeah. I was getting there. I was gonna get there. Sorry. What was that? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so his whole thing was to be perceived. That was his big one.
Oh, swimming in the mind of God.
Yep.
Which is such an interesting, kind of disturbing concept to me.
Why is it interesting and disturbing me?
Because the way I know God is like so interactive and engaging, and when you put it that way, where your existence is only because you've been perceived and because you are quote unquote swimming in the mind of God.
Oh, interesting.
He's not interacting with you. You're just
I
there.
see.
Like he created you and then that was it. And now you just exist and he's just watching you. And there's like no, I don't know. It just felt very distant.
Yeah.
And strange.
Yeah.
Like very
it's like you're a
not
dream
relational.
of God.
Yeah, like
that's weird. Yeah, I've
abstract.
heard people talk about that before. Actually,
Yeah, which is which even I just remember my group's discussion. It was like that's kind of even the opposite effect that Barclay was going for.
Yeah.
He was trying to put forth like a philosophy, a Christian philosophy that's not deistic, where God wound up the universe and then set it in motion and pushed it off. Where it's like he's actually intimately connected to every single thing that happens, every function and every even existence itself. So he says for a thing to be, it needs to be perceived. That's how he starts his argument. And so for that to be, it exists because I'm perceiving it.
Yeah.
I mean, he uses a number of illustrations through his reading, but essentially then he comes to the point where he's like, what about if I have a candle burning and I'm perceiving it, so it exists, and then I leave the room, it obviously ceases to exist because I'm not perceiving it. I come back in and now it's suddenly shorter. Well, then obviously I would have to infer it was existing the whole time I wasn't there. So he just builds it block by block, this whole argument. So then he's like, everything continues to be and will continue to be because there's this God, creator God, who's intimately involved in the processes of everyday life.
It's kind of like the in him we live, move, and have our being.
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, absolutely. We never brought that verse up, but totally. Yeah, so he was going against that deistic, like winding up the universe and pushing it off.
Yeah.
But you took it.
Yeah. And I think it was just that
sounded weird.
You
took it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was,
no, a lot did.
Yeah.
I think a lot felt uncomfortable.
Well, because it was a very semantically based interpretation of his reading, because his point was hello, God is the ultimate perceiver, and he holds everything, right? That was his point. But to just put it, it just felt like some things were left out of the argument, at least for me. But he got, like, when I was reading it, I thought I agreed with it. I was like, yes, this is right and right and right. And it wasn't until we took it implicationally that I was like, oh, wait, there's actually more to this. You know, because I actually, walking into that week of metaphysics, my map, my reflection map was mind is more important than matter. And so I initially agreed with Barclay. I was like, yes, like this is everything that I agree with. Yeah. And then people started, like other people started saying, well, implicationally, like this is where it goes. And I was like, oh,
interesting.
Yeah, I actually, like there is more to this, you know? So it was a very interesting week for me. It's very interesting.
I remember our group was like, well, what about the fact that I really feel like I'm seeing this like real material thing? And Barclay's like, well, it's actually not there. The material is not there. It's only God's mind perceiving it.
What?
So I know. The end of our discussion was like, and this was my group's like problem with Barclay. They were like, if to be is to be perceived, and everything is because God's constantly perceiving it, that's a good thing. That makes sense. The fact that I feel like I see things, then for me to perceive something is for me to be deceived.
Right.
Because I can't. My feelings or me feeling matter or material things. I must be constantly deceived.
That's like some Matrix stuff.
Yeah, because I really do believe in a physical world, but if I believe in it, I must be deceived. Because it's not there. It's just.
So you've got the matter and then the mind, but what was the conclusion of the week? Like
at the end of it?
Yeah.
That it's both.
That's both. I like that better.
Mind and matter. They both matter.
They both matter.
Which read was there a reading that was related to that, or was that just like, hey, let's take all these?
Schaefer was the final.
Oh, Schaefer.
Oh,
yes.
That figures. Okay. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I like Schaefer. Yeah. He's good. Yeah.
Do you know John Seal used to be Schaefer's chauffeur?
I did. That's crazy.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening and don't know John Seal, he's one of our. He's actually on our academic board now.
He's amazing.
He's amazing. Yeah. And he's.
I wonder if he listens to this podcast.
Yeah, John, do you listen to our podcast? Text me if you hear
this.
We'll see. Okay. Fantastic. But he's on. Okay, anyway, Schaefer. So Francis Schaefer. Labrie, Francis Schaefer.
Yeah.
If you don't know those, look them up. We don't have time to talk about them. But
yeah, it was Schaefer's metaphysics. And ultimately, I mean, he's got a lot of Schaeferisms that I don't actually know how to translate into normal words.
John Seal does or Schaefer does?
No, Schaefer does. Oh. So when I talk about Schaefer, I talk in Schaefer's language, and I've learned people that's not.
Let's try that, and I'll translate because I.
No, yeah, you were the one. It was in my some of my first essays that I was like echoing Schaefer, and you were like, maybe try to use different language.
Oh,
and I was like, oh,
that's funny. That's
sorry.
Funny.
Yeah, he. The one thing that's sticking in my mind is the line of despair, and I don't know why. That doesn't have much to do with.
Oh, it kind of does, because he was talking. Is that where you're talking about this above and below Platonic?
Above and below, yeah.
And that's kind of how the week ends. We ask that question of, because it's what's real. It's what the real question is what's primary. What's actually at the bottom of everything? Is it matter, which would be as to say. Matter, material, or is it mind? Is it spirit, or is it or is it material? Is it supernatural, or is it natural? What's more important? What's primary? And so they asked that question on Monday. That's like your reflection question. Then they ask it again on Friday. And Davis would say, we read Schaefer and we come to the conclusion like, well, it can't be just matter and it can't be just mind. So it must be in equal parts matter and mind, or it must be in equal parts physical and spiritual. And Davis is just like, we might say that, but he's like, I'd challenge any of you on that. You're all Platonists. He's like, you're all people who would, he's like, you all think that somehow the spiritual is better than the physical.
What?
He's like, you actually don't value the physical. You don't value your own physical bodies as much as you think. Yeah.
Why did he say that?
Well, I mean, so we started the week off with Plato's allegory of the cave. And I think a lot of us agreed with it because he talked about, you know, you start off in this cave and then you move to this upper world and then you go back down to the cave and you like save people or like try to save people and bring them up into the upper world with you. And I think a lot of us saw it as truth or we agreed with it and saw a lot of our own lives reflected in it and just the way we live, especially as Christians, you know, we applied that too to like the gospel and, at the end of the week, he was like, now that you've read all these arguments, you'll probably say that they both matter equally, but if you look back at your life, you probably still live like...
Oh, you don't live like they both matter.
You live like the cave, like
interesting.
You live as if one is lower or more... he never used this word, but it kind of makes sense, but like one is holier or like more sacred.
Oh, like outside the cave is...
More,
Oh, interesting, because I've always heard the cave thing as the rescue, but he's saying not, really?
Well, he's saying that the Platonic thinking sets up this dichotomy. Where it's an upper realm and a lower realm.
Yeah.
And the upper realm is better than the lower realm. He uses it...
Like significance.
Yeah.
Like one has more significance.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like not that one doesn't exist or one is like totally unimportant, but just that this upper realm is of more significance or like is better somehow.
Like the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a really good question, but I remember we asked it on, I think, Wednesday of week 2, but it's like, what is Christian music? And that
my gosh.
It's the perfect segue into realizing just how Platonic we are, where it's like, well, it's, I suppose it's like, it's God glorifying music. That's what my discussion group came to. And they're like, okay, so what's God glorifying music? And it's like, well, is it music that says like God and Jesus, right? It has their
John
names.
3:16, 17.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, well, could we have God glorifying music that doesn't have lyrics
like
and no words?
Yeah.
Instrumental. Like, and then how is it God glorifying music if it didn't say their names? Well, it's good music. And it's like, okay, so then what's good music? Is that Christian music? Is Christian music good music? Like, does it, to be a Christian song, does it just mean to be excellent?
Yeah.
What if you can write about something that's beautiful and totally natural?
Yeah.
Totally like a sailboat, like on the ocean, or like driving your pickup truck, like the Eagles. They're writing about real day life, like totally normal.
Yeah.
But it's somehow not spiritual.
Yeah.
And somehow, if it's saying God, and there was some disagreement there, and it just poses a great question, and there's definitely some disagreement when it comes to the end of the day, where it's like, to be a Christian song, or do we compromise on our music? Just to insert a couple things to check the boxes. To make Christian music, or can't we just create and make beautiful things? How do you make a Christian ceramic pot? You can't, obviously.
Yeah.
Or can you? I mean, what is it? You put a cross on it. Now it's a Christian.
That's
sacred.
a Christian pot. Oh,
and he's just like like, see how that illustrates just this like upper realm is better than lower realm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I think somebody even brought up, because I think you had my group for that.
Did I?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But somebody also brought up like creation and how creation will make music. Like how is that not considered Christian music?
That's good.
Like whale song or like the frequency of, I think it was a flower.
I don't remember that.
Oh, you don't?
Group?
Oh, maybe not.
I feel like I would remember that. The whale music.
Yeah. They like, but
what's a whale? What's the whale?
Yeah, what's a whale?
Well, absolutely not. No way. I can Google it.
Yeah, we talked about even a Christian job, though, didn't we?
Yeah, a Christian job. Like, what is a Christian job?
Yeah, what's a Christian job?
Is it
selling tires?
Yeah, no, actually, like doing your job with excellence, whatever it is. Yeah.
Boom. So good.
Like it can all be. It's all supposed to be God glorifying.
And Andrew Hawk the other day. I wonder if he listens to this podcast. Anytime I mention someone, I'm just gonna say, I wonder if they listen. But he was like, dude, this is how it ties in all the weeks. He's like, week 3 is all about axiology, what's good. Week 4 is all about telos. And he said the end or the good of man or the end of man is to be excellent. The axios of man is, or the telos of man is his axios. Dude, I was like, high five.
Okay, so speaking of that, we did what is knowledge? What was the conclusion we came to?
What is knowledge?
That week. Oh, is reason and revelation.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what is real? Mind and matter, spiritual, natural. And then
sorry, I just love it. Starts off with a like perceived dichotomy. Most of these questions, and it usually ends in reconciliation. And like it's actually both.
Both end.
Yeah.
Andrew Sherman used to be like,
yes.
Both end. Yeah. That's
did God choose me or did I choose him?
Yes.
Yeah.
What if Andrew Sherman listens to this?
Definitely not. Andrew Sherman doesn't listen to any podcast. Week 3. The question is,
what is good?
What is good?
It's good, yep.
Axiology.
Yeah.
So what's good, yo? What was that?
What's good? Yeah. That joke is made every year. You
yeah.
get to axiology. What's good?
But it helps you remember, right?
Yo, what's good?
Philosophy module.
Yeah.
What's good, yo?
That's good.
The Excel College philosophy module.
Mm-hmm.
No? Okay.
No. It's fine.
I run things by Cassie to see if they're cool or not, and most of them are not.
You could get, like, module merch.
That's what I just said.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Module merch?
But not specific weeks.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Like, people, their favorite module, they can get, like, Excel merch for it.
Yeah, and have a pun from Andrew Hawk on there.
Maybe not a pun.
Oh.
Maybe like a statement.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway,
what's good?
Okay, so what's good?
What's
so,
good?
what was the question of the question is what's good, but like.
Yeah. Well, our reflection question to start off the week was, how do you decide when something is morally right?
Okay.
Like, how do you measure basically what is what is considered morally right? I had a long answer that was like, well, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
And like sometimes
Oh, this was when we did the Kant and the and Bentham. Yeah.
Aristotle.
Okay, so so help people understand that. So Aristotle was like
vices.
The halfway point between vices, right?
The mean between
two vices.
So basically, like if you're shooting for courage, it's the mean between foolhardiness, which is like an excess of courage, and cowardice, which is a lack of courage. So the vices are always an excess and a lack of whatever virtue you're trying to reach.
And he said in order to get to good, it was like trial and error. Essentially, you had to follow somebody that was already kind of acting good.
Virtue is a practice.
Yeah.
Virtue's a practice.
And the end of man was to become virtuous.
Yeah.
Was
the summum bonum was a Greek word for happiness that I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
I can spell it.
Oh,
Eudaimonia.
But he seemed to leave room for like, whereas Kant was talking about good, and there was like no room, will room. So can we talk about him for a second?
What Kant's was good.
Yeah.
Goodwill, right?
Yeah, he talks about the goodwill. His main thing is that universal maxim.
Oh, the categorical
imperative.
Yeah.
So he also talked about having a goodwill.
Yeah.
But essentially he said that unless you can say that everyone at all times should do this, you can't.
Yeah, so whatever you act upon in that moment, if you can't consider it to be a universal law that everyone should follow, then it's not the right choice. Like, it's not morally good.
So let's throw that analogy out that we were using in class, because I feel like that'll help people understand a little bit more. And then let's talk about how Kant and Aristotle and Bentham would think about
would
that.
have answered it. Oh my gosh, this is literally a class in like 5 minutes.
So the analogy was, if you are in 1940 Paris and you have decided to hide Jews in your home, Nazis are occupying Paris, and they come and knock on your door, and they ask the question, are there any Jews here? And the question is, do you lie?
Or do you tell the truth?
Or do you tell the truth?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would Kant say to that?
Okay. This is how I answered it in class. Were you a facilitator? I think you were. Yeah. Okay. So I feel like Kant, because was it Kant that talked about duty? Was that him? Yeah. Okay. So I think he would have said that by protecting or like harboring the Jews in the first place, he had fulfilled that portion of duty to a goodwill. And when confronted with the choice of whether to tell the truth to the Nazi soldiers and give up the people hiding in his house versus lying, he would tell the truth, because his duty to fulfill the universal law at that moment would be to tell the truth, because he's already fulfilled his duty as far as like protecting. And now it's time to fulfill the duty of telling the truth.
So even if that means they're going to go into the house, find the Jews, probably take them to a concentration camp, he still has to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Because unless you say everyone at all times should lie.
Yeah.
You cannot lie in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah.
That's Kant.
Yeah, that's Kant.
Pretty black and white.
Yeah.
I like where he was going with the goodwill thing. Like,
Yeah.
your point is to get to a goodwill.
Yeah.
But he said in order to get there, it's essentially this, like, you have to be able to live by this categorical.
Mm-hmm.
So not many people in our group were about that.
No.
But then you have Bentham.
Calculus.
Calculus?
Awful. Yeah, he applied a calculus. It was. He like tried to create a formula for morality and created this calculus for deciding what was right or wrong. It was,
So what would he have done for this? Or what would he have said that you should do?
Well, his whole thing was pain or pleasure. And what is good is what is pleasurable, and what is bad is what is painful.
For the most amount of people too, right?
For the most amount of people.
Yeah, so he if I could, he's much more of like a, obviously, Kant would be more of a black and white, and then Jeremy Bentham would be more of a, maybe good to look at it in terms of a scale. Which way would it, after you add up all the pains and pleasures, does it lean more towards what's good or what's pleasurable for people, or is it going to actually produce what's more painful for people? And you want to make that decision that's going to actually produce human flourishing and going to produce like pleasure, just maybe a bit of a loaded word, but more of like human flourishing. What's actually going to be better for human beings? Yeah. And there's some pleasures that he's
not
say,
saying like sensual pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's not saying, and there's some pleasures that will be good, but then they'll pendulum swing back. The automatic consequences of them will be pain or suffering, and that's what he would call a pure thing. So a pure thing is something that's good, and it's not going to pendulum swing back and bite you in the butt later. It's not a pleasure that's you're gonna pay for it later in a bad way. So for him, he would definitely probably deceive He would probably be down with lying. Yeah. Okay. Funny fact about Jeremy Bentham. This is just kind of a fun, hilarious thing, but. So Andrew Hawk showed me, Andrew Hawk.
Yeah.
We're gonna have
him. Whether or not he listens to this podcast. He was saying how at Oxford in England, Jeremy Bentham apparently was a very interesting kind of like mad scientist kind of guy.
Okay.
And he had this plan for when he died that they would preserve his skeleton, and it's on display at Oxford.
Ew.
And his whole body is still there. He figured out this way to like even preserve his head.
Oh.
And so like even the skin on his head, it's crazy. And this is like 300 years ago he died. But the students at Oxford used to literally, as pranks, steal his head out of the display case and take it to football games and stuff.
Oh my God.
Or like his preserved, like shrunken. It's very disturbing.
Like soccer football games.
Yeah, like soccer football.
Kick his head around?
No, just take it and be like, or prank the university by stealing Bentham's head. It's so awful. But anyway, that just made me laugh a lot. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You can find it on Wikipedia.
That is for sure British humor.
Very British humor,
Yeah. Kind of mortifying but funny, I guess, at the same time. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then Aristotle with the golden mean.
Yeah.
What would he do?
Oh, this was when I changed my mind on. And I think at first I would have said... I thought that he would tell the truth and give up the Jewish family hiding in his home. And then, but the more my group talked about it, the more I realized, wait, no, he said in the piece that we read by him that it was like a spectrum, trying to get to this virtue. It takes practice. And he said if you have to if you're not going to reach the full virtue, or if you don't know, it's better to err on the side of foolhardiness than the side of the exact opposite of the virtue you're trying to get. So courage. He said the opposite of courage is cowardice. So it's better than to act in foolhardiness if you have to choose one vice, because at least then it's still it's an excess and not a total lack or total opposite. So it's well, I think he would absolutely lie. And then because we talked about, well, even if they get captured and everybody, it doesn't work out for everybody and they all end up in a concentration camp or getting killed.
At least you tried.
At least you tried.
Yeah.
And you erred on the side of acting,
Yeah.
My group had this interesting point where they were this was Rebecca Robinette. she'd mentioned her grandma.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I wonder if she listens to this podcast.
Her grandma?
Yeah.
She doesn't.
Or maybe Rebecca.
Yeah,
but
I'll call her out.
essentially, it's this. She was like, "Is it courage to tell the truth in that instance, just as much as it's courageous to lie?" And so, in terms of courage, is it courageous to say? And she used the example of her grandma because her grandma said, "In no circumstances ever are you able to lie. God will give you the words to tell the truth, and still, He'll work out good."
Oh, interesting.
And it's like she brought up some example. She'll be disappointed that I can't remember the name of the book, but
is it Corrie ten Boom?
yeah, Corrie ten Boom.
Yeah.
Where they told the truth. Not Corrie ten Boom, but someone else.
Was it Izzy that was talking about this?
I think it was both of them. Well, I was in Rebecca's group, so that's a different group.
Okay.
But yeah, she brought up Corrie ten Boom, and she was like, "There's this one woman who lied and got really good at lying and protected Jews, but then there's this one woman that told the truth, and basically they would take them away, but then the next day the concentration camp was like evacuated. There was a jailbreak, essentially, something like that, where it's like she trusted. I mean, I wouldn't probably go that far, but it's this idea that what if it's courageous to actually trust God? Are their lives ultimately in my hands?
Yeah.
And some would say no, so trust God.
Interesting.
Their lives are in His hands. Let them go. And then someone say, absolutely, God trusted me with their lives. So that's where our group went. It was a really good conversation.
That is a good point.
Well, that's where after because we asked ourselves the questions too, like, okay, well, what would we actually do in this situation? And it was after our discussion, after class time had ended, that I realized, I was like, I actually don't know if I can answer this like 100% the same every time, because like it depends on Holy Spirit and discernment for every situation. There's so much nuance. Because He could absolutely tell you to tell the truth, and then that makes room for a miracle of like the Nazi soldiers walk into the room that the family's hiding in and you don't see them. So it's like, what does God want to do in that moment? He might give you the words to not exactly lie, but tell the truth and they don't even hear it, or like change your words, like use words to your advantage where you're not actually lying and you're still not telling them that there's a Jewish family hiding in your basement, like you don't know what He's going to ask of you in that moment. And He might say, like, don't tell them, like you might have to stay silent. You might quote scripture like Jesus did to resist. You just don't know what He's going to do and how He's going to use you. So.
No, that's interesting. So I guess what's the conclusion of that week then? And like what is good?
It was that moral absolutes, like our rest in God's fixed nature, which I think answers that whole thought experiment of like what is right in that moment rests in God's fixed character and nature and who He is, and that is a dynamic thing that is not a formula. You can't just like slap that onto everything.
Dion would say his methods might change, but his motives don't.
Yes. Like, how He does it is unpredictable, but who He is absolutely predictable.
That's awesome.
Also, apologize if you hear a baby crying. We have a baby upstairs.
She's fresh.
She's precious. What's her name?
Anya.
That's right. I
wonder if Anya.
Anya, do you listen?
Anya, do you listen to this podcast? You want to sleep? Okay, so then, just for the sake of time, let's move into the last week, which is, okay, what is knowledge?
Ahead?
What is real? What is good? And then what is ahead?
Yeah. Teleology.
Ahead is...
Teleology.
It's like,
no, stop.
So it's like you have your brain inside of it
that
and
pun
like
was
two
made
eyes.
every single time.
I thought I just thought of that. I'd never heard anyone make that joke before.
Right.
Every single time. Andrew Hawk is in our class. Of course that pun was made.
Okay, so what's ahead? So, Hesiod?
Hesiod.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
sweet. Yeah. So Greek guy. He saw like history as this essentially descent into dystopia or madness, even decline. Yeah. And that there's like cycles, but they're all going downwards.
Yeah.
We saw Kant, who said history is actually going towards utopia.
Yeah.
But it's also in cycles.
Yeah.
We saw
Marx,
which is equality. He thought that history was going towards like perfect equality.
And for him, that was utopia, right?
Yeah, that was his utopia.
Classless society.
Yeah. So we actually, Marx was interesting because I feel like when you're reading him at first, you're like, yeah. And then later you're like,
A lot of people have had that reaction
to
Marx where they go, yeah. And
no, it's because he's so like I always say I'm like Marx.
Millions. Actually.
I feel this way about
Marx. Millions.
But Marx is a genius. He's just off. Like
a little evil genius.
Like he was absolutely super intelligent and like very swaying and convincing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like he got it wrong.
Yeah.
Like once you think.
Why did he get it wrong?
It just. He misses the point. Like he does say some things that I think are true, or at least agreed with as a like almost out of context statement. I'm like, that sounds good. You know, like that sounds good.
Yeah.
But then when you realize where he like the agenda,
where he's taking it,
you're like, you're using it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. But his end though is human flourishing.
Yeah.
I think that's where you learn.
The end he's aiming towards.
Yeah, that's where you learn to be really charitable towards Marx. You're like, his motivation is actually human flourishing. Let's do away with unnecessary human suffering. Yeah. And that's why he's so attractive. Yeah. Why people really...
Which was the same as Kant.
Totally. Kant was
his end was human flourishing.
It's just different means.
Okay, it's crazy. If you haven't read, what's the title of this reading by Kant?
It's the universal history of with cosmopolitan intent.
Yeah.
Or a human universal history with cosmopolitan intent. It's hard. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But essentially, this was in 1785, and it literally seems like it laid the foundation for the United Nations.
Dude, it's so...
He even mentions... what is it?
Unity of Nations.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was that, like, just as men under a society have to learn how to get along in order to progress and grow, so societies under this grand society needs to learn how to... Which I would say is a kingdom thought.
Totally.
But... his whole thing was like, what man are you going to find that could run this?
Yeah.
Gee, no.
Yeah. It's so good.
And so we asked a couple questions that I thought were interesting. One was like, why do these people actually feel the need to paint an end in the first place, and to paint that end as utopia? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so our group, we talked about, well, the end gives you how to live in the here and now. Like, what end do you think you're going to? Like,
purpose actually is the driving force behind how you live your practical daily life.
Yeah. And the end gives you the purpose.
Yeah.
But then we talked about how, so like that whole thought of flourishing, they would say utopia, or actually no, they wouldn't say utopia, but we've given a class of utopia.
Yeah.
Is actually where we're trying to take this thing, and even in the Christian view is actually where we're trying to take this thing. The question where we get off is, how do we get there?
Yeah.
So Marx would say you get there through a classless society and class struggles that ends up in classes. And Kant would say you get there through endless conflict and wars until you come to a point where you've progressed enough to where you're tired of that.
Yeah.
Hesiod would say, no, you're just going to decline. And then the question was like, okay, what's the Christian worldview? Like, what does Jesus say about this? You know? And I think we talked about this. You have to, in our class, or in our group, we talked about like, in order to know the end, you also have to know the beginning. And the beginning was, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the world, bear God's image to the world on my behalf. And then it ends, so that starts in a garden, and it ends in a city where man's walking with God. Tree of life is there. The river of the is flowing through the city, like watering the nations. The leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. And it's this view of shalom. That was not somebody passing gas. That was Christian walking.
Creaky floors.
I'm just gonna defend myself there. So, that end is shalom, and the question is like, how do we? And Christians have all different kinds of views of like how we get there, or if we're even gonna get there.
Yeah.
And which is So for me personally, I would say like when Jesus on the cross, he got enthroned, and he's actually taking us to that place of shalom. Like the Holy Spirit's actually working through his people to take us to that place. But no, it's not just through class struggles. No, it's not through wars and then nations. It's actually like the Spirit like taking mankind to these places. Like Paul would say, he's defeating all of his enemies, which would be death, sin, and the last great enemy to be defeated is death. And then, but it's really interesting because I think the Christian has to look at, where is he taking this thing, and okay, so now how do I live now because of that.
Yeah.
So even in Ukraine, so we're filming this when Ukraine is being invaded by Russia.
Yeah.
And my natural kind of like American whatever is like, yeah, Ukraine, like stick it to Russia.
Yeah.
Like revolt, arms. But then I have to look at like, okay, if we're taking this thing to flourishing, where all nations and tongues and tribes are actually like, okay, how do I pray now? Like, how do I live now?
That's a great point.
And I won't answer that for everybody, but like that's the question I'm asking.
Well, and even like in that, you know, like war is terrible. It costs lives. It costs a lot, you know, and it's hard and there's a lot of suffering in it. But I think because of this war, like we know someone in Ukraine who is there not for the war. They had Ukraine on their heart for years and was only just recently able to move there and felt the call of God on her life to move there for the sake of advocating for the orphan crisis in Ukraine that has been going on for years. And because Ukraine is like on all the headlines and is on the front of everybody's minds, they had a news station reach out to her and is now like has a platform when everybody has Ukraine on their minds to speak about this orphan crisis that has been going on for years. But now people get to actually see it, and people are now actually thinking about it because Ukraine has been on the news and on the front page of everything because of the war. Yeah. And so it's like this weird thing where it's like, yes, this terrible thing is happening, but it's given voice and platform to something that is important, you know, and has gone long unnoticed by the other countries. Yeah.
We just found out that soccer's at 2:15 today, and it's 1:40.
They have to go. They got to go.
We're gonna wrap up this podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. That was fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Anything deep or?
Teleology. What's ahead? I'm saying 3-0 my team over Andrew's team.
Oh, snap. That's human
Rob.
flourishing. I don't play soccer. I flourish outside of soccer.
Do you?
Yes.
Is there flourishing outside of soccer?
Yeah, it's called volleyball.
What?
Literally. Yeah.
All right.
Wait, let's talk about the next
Cassie
module.
To come on the next
module.
module.
Really
next
quick.
module.
What's the next module?
Mathematics.
Yeah.
How does teleology and philosophy point to mathematics? We don't have to answer that. Maybe we'll let our audience ponder it, and we'll return in the next episode in the math module.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, actually, I don't know.
I just asked this question to Davis because I was like, you know what I didn't talk about last Wednesday, which was our final discussion. I was like, whenever we're ending a module, it's always, I mean, Pete literally built it so you can totally like lead perfectly into the next module. I was like, I totally forgot to touch on math because usually it's on Friday. It was on Wednesday this week, but he gave me a really interesting answer. So we'll keep our audience in suspense when it comes to that, and maybe next episode we'll jump into that.
In the meantime, I'm going to go call Tammy and ask if we can move our meeting so that I can come to soccer.
Right on.
Oh my gosh.
See you there.
All right.
Fantastic.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. It was awesome having Cassie on. So I think what we're going to do from now on with our module podcast is try to have Cassie and Andrew Hawk.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Alternate. Yeah. Meaning going back and forth. One episode to the next episode. Anyways, so yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We love you guys a ton. Hope you got a lot out of this podcast. As always, if you want to know more about Excel College, you can follow us on Instagram at the Excel College. We just got some reels up.
Sweet.
We're getting... No, that wasn't cool. Cassie just made a face at me. I told you. She always tells me if it's cool or not. Anyways, you can listen to us anywhere podcasts are found. Spotify, Apple Podcast. Those are the only platforms I know of. But there's like 6 more that they're found on, so you can listen to all any of those.
Yeah, if you thought today was a content overload, all the names, all the readings in 1 hour span, just to let you know, we go through all this curriculum in the span of 4 weeks. So we spread it out and we go a lot deeper. One thing that this podcast is actually amazing for is for sending to people that actually would flourish in a context like this. So if you know of anyone that actually has this desire, like Cassie was sharing at the beginning of the episode, to go deep, have those deep conversations, really think about those big questions, not just of philosophy, but of life, of all of creation in general, shoot them this podcast episode, send them to our Instagram, the Excel College. We love what God's doing here at Excel, and we can't wait to see what comes next. So what does come next is our math module episode. So be looking out for that.